I'm honestly really tired, but we gotta do this. Okay, we gotta talk about this. And I decided to just go live here instead of doing a YouTube video about it because, it takes time to edit and stuff. Alright, let me first start off by saying that I 100% believe that what happened to George Floyd was a murder. It was, who knows if the cop meant to do that, but regardless, it was an unjustified use of deadly force by the cop, and the cop should face criminal charges for murder in court. Okay, with that being said, there is literally zero justification to go rioting and burning down your own freaking city. Okay, there's none. There's not logical justification for it, and there's no moral justification for it. Okay, so number one, let's say, so I obviously, as a supporter of the Second Amendment, I believe that in a case where the government has committed serious malpractice, the use of force is justified. Now, I don't think, firstly, I don't think the government has committed serious malpractice here. One cop committed serious malpractice, but what has the government done about it? Okay, so already the city of Minneapolis is investigating the case. The DOJ, Trump's DOJ, has got involved. So we got the federal government involved in this case. It's basically, without a doubt, there's going to be criminal charges brought against at least the cop who was on his neck. Presumably, I think it's probably going to be criminal charges against all four cops. So we've got criminal charges coming. So the cops got fired. We've got criminal charges coming. I don't think this is serious malpractice by the government. Because obviously, right, there are bad. No conservative has ever said that there are not bad cops. There are obviously bad cops out there. But the issue is, are cops who do bad things, and our people, are American citizens in general who do bad things, being brought to justice, right? Because obviously we can do our best, but we're never going to stop murders or unjust killings from happening. But the question is, are American citizens who do bad things being brought to justice? In this case, it's basically a definitive yes. The cop was fired like the next freaking day, and there's inevitably going to be criminal charges brought against them. Okay, so, but let's pretend. So that's why I don't think violent force is justified, because what has the government done that's wrong so far? This cop did a bad thing, sure, and this cop works for the government. But to pretend like the government isn't doing something to try to deal with the situation is utter nonsense. Okay, but let's pretend for a moment that the use of that we're in a situation where, like, the government did something so bad that the use of violence is justified. Okay. So if we're out here to protest police brutality, what in the world does breaking into your fellow citizens' shops and burning them down and stealing all the private property inside there and looting ATM machines, what in the world does that have to do with protesting police brutality? Honest question. Okay, because the cops in Hong Kong, not the cops, the protesters in Hong Kong, those are protesters protesting legitimate police brutality. So what do? Notice, Hong Kong protesters don't attack their fellow citizens. They attack, civilians at least, they attack the police, right? You've seen Hong Kong protesters in their riots, they've gotten in fights with the police. If you're going to protest the police, then, and if you're going to do it in a violent fashion, which I don't think is morally justified, but at least that would be logically justified if you're protesting the police, why in the world would you not get in fights with the police? Instead, you have these thugs, and they're opportunists. Don't get me wrong. They care nothing about the death of George Floyd. All they saw was a moment of civil unrest, and that to them that was an opportunity to go out and steal crap and destroy their own community. How in the world does destroying your own community, how in the world does terrorizing your fellow citizens, how in the world does breaking into private businesses and stealing the crap from the shelves and burning down private businesses and stealing money from ATM machines, how in the world does that help protest police brutality? Because don't get me wrong, I don't agree with the narrative that we should make this a broad Black Lives Matter narrative about policing. But after this situation, it's a respectable position to have, and I would respect people who go out and protest peacefully and hold signs and have a normal protest about that. But how in the world does terrorizing your fellow citizens help to solve the issue of police brutality? There's no logical justification for this. From just a purely practical standpoint, it gives Black Lives Matter it gives the impression to the general public that Black Lives Matter is a violent organization of, frankly, thugs, right, who cause civil unrest and commit crime and commit arson and burn stuff and do all this stuff, which is not true of the greater Black Lives Matter organization, but it's about optics, right? This is why, the conservatives try to push out our extremists on our side so much, because the media will stand there with a camera and basically pin all of what we believe on these few extremists, right? So from a purely practical standpoint, it is very bad optics for Black Lives Matter to basically allow these rioters, and I say allow because I'm sure the organizations themselves aren't actively engaging these riots, but sort of allowing these rioters to go on without condemnation. It creates a very bad image for whatever you're trying to do. It creates a very bad image. But okay, let's go deep in that. Let's talk about the actual morality of what they're doing. Pragmatics aside, if you have a problem with police, and if to you the problem is so serious that force is justified, why in the hell wouldn't you use force against the police? Why the hell are you going to use that force to protest against your fellow citizens? There's a video, and I posted this on Twitter and here on Instagram, from AutoZone. Rioters literally burning down AutoZone. What does AutoZone have to do with police brutality? What did the store owner, what did the people that work there, what did any of them have to do with the issue, with what happened, and even just policing and police brutality in general? The answer is nothing. There's a video of rioters, looters, and thugs breaking into ATM machines. What does the Bank of America in Minneapolis, what in the world does that have anything to do with police brutality? They're attacking private citizens, private business owners, and then these people come out and say, like, "Oh my God, well, it's a symptom of what's going on in America," and in reality, it's an uprising, right? Like that, you'll hear this rhetoric, and you're going to hear this rhetoric tomorrow. What's going on is an uprising. Well, an uprising, a revolution, like against what? Against what? It's clearly not police brutality, because if it were an uprising against the police and police brutality, then they'd be uprising against police and cops and government agents in general. They're uprising against their fellow citizens. That is a very stupid way to start an uprising. A way to start a revolution is usually basically just attack your fellow citizens for no reason that didn't do anything. Again, I'll go back to the issue of Hong Kong. Okay, Hong Kong protesters are protesting a real situation of government malpractice and police brutality. They do not attack their fellow citizens. In fact, there's a famous video of the Hong Kong protesters literally moving their blockade and getting out of the way when an ambulance came. Okay, that is what but on top of that, when they do get into fights, and I think those fights are justified, right? Because as I've said before, I'm not one of those hippies that says, violence is never justified, because obviously in some cases violence are justified. I mean, we had a revolution against the government where violence was justified. But if you're going to commit violence, right? And I don't think violence is justified in this case. Don't get me wrong. I think the government is literally doing everything in their power to handle this situation correctly. But let's say we're in a situation where violence is justified against the government. Commit the violence against the government. You don't commit violence against your fellow citizens and fellow business owners and just random people who haven't done anything to you. I mean, that's just stupid. That's if it were a real war, like those would be considered crimes against humanity. And yet here we are. Even further, you'll hear Black Lives Matter talk a lot about the sort of cycle of poverty and racism and whatever in the United States. And again, I'm not saying all the Black Lives Matter people are on board with these riots, because obviously they're not. But from a purely practical standpoint, okay, and I live in Los Angeles. This happened after the 1990 Los Angeles riots, okay? From a purely practical standpoint, if you terrorize the local businesses in your community, and I don't have the video of it here, but there's a video of Target. Like, they literally cleared all the shelves at Target. Like, these thugs and these protesters, I'll call them rioters and thugs, because that's what they are. They're opportunists, taking full advantage of George Floyd. literally cleared the shelves. Like there was nothing left at Target. They just desecrated the whole place. And this has happened to a lot of businesses. Okay, so what is the business owner going to do tomorrow, right? I can guarantee you, in all of these areas, tomorrow the business owners are going to decide that they want to get up and leave the area. And in terms of new businesses, no new businesses are going to want to come in. And this is exactly what happened in South Central Los Angeles in the 1990s, because all these thugs and these rioters were breaking in the stores, and the police did nothing. So the police did nothing. So there was no guarantee that anyone's store could be safe. Well, guess what happened? The businesses moved out. The stores moved out. And you'll hear, like, Black Lives Matter always talk about the cycle of poverty in our communities. Like, okay, well, guess what? The cycle of poverty is going to be pretty freaking bad after all the businesses in your area move out because they're terrified of operating, because you have thugs, which in a lot of cases, like, you guys refuse to condemn. You have these thugs and these rioters and these looters who are terrorizing businesses, and you have a policing situation, where because the police got in trouble for something else, now the police are not allowed to enforce basic civil law, right? So we're in a situation where if the police even get involved to stop rioting and looting of private businesses, which the police absolutely needs to get involved in, we're in a situation where the police can't even do that because the police are in trouble. And again, what happened to George Floyd was wrong, and the police should get in trouble for that. But you can't basically change the situation so that now we have no policing, because that's what is going on in these streets. We have utter and complete lawlessness on the streets of Minneapolis and the streets of Los Angeles, and everywhere there are freaking riots. So when there's a high degree of danger in this neighborhood, and there's no guarantee that the police will do anything to enforce the basic law, all the businesses in that area are going to move out. So you're going to see poverty worsen in those communities. You're going to see hardship and just the difficulty to find economic opportunity, which, I mean, that is minority empowerment, right? Like, minorities need to be finding these jobs and like having better communities. Well, guess what's happening? Well, you're going to have totally desolate, like, minority communities where it's just the situation is just freaking terrible. There's going to be no business. No businesses are going to want to come to an area or even want to stay in an area where they are a constant threat of being broken into and looted by these thugs, and the police can't do anything. On top of that, to add insult to injury, the police can't do anything about it. What we are really seeing here, and I feel no apology in saying this whatsoever, obviously the people who go out and protest peacefully with good intent and in good faith, those people are fine, and I encourage them to do so, right? I encourage them to express their concerns to the community. But the people, the rioters, the looters, the thugs, and the criminals who decided that this was an opportunity to break into private businesses, to set AutoZone on fire, to loot Target of everything that was on the shelf, to rob the ATM machines at the Bank of America. You guys are sick opportunists who care nothing about the death of George Floyd. In fact, beyond that, you guys are sick opportunists who are actively exploiting the death of George Floyd just because you wanted to go out and commit crime and have arson and steal stuff. Like that straight up. Like, you should just use this crap as an excuse to commit crime. Okay? And you're the pure opportunist. I have no sympathy. I'm not going to respond to anyone who breaks into a private business to quote-unquote protest police brutality. It's anyone who terrorizes private citizens and breaks into private businesses and sets private businesses on fire. I have no sympathy for you. I believe nothing of anything you claim to say about police brutality, because you're not protesting police brutality. You're using an issue that obviously created civil unrest in America, and the fact that you're using the fact specifically that police are not allowed to do their job now because they're in trouble. You're using that fact to steal stuff, to terrorize people, and to actively commit crime. You just found an excuse to be a freaking criminal. And that's the bottom line, okay?